about who we are at BGV, what we're interested in, what kind of founders we back, what the program will contain. And then we'll hand over to Shitty for a bit, who can answer a couple of questions. And then we'll go to you. Hopefully we'll have 30, 40 minutes of all your questions answered, all your worries covered over. And we'll look forward to seeing the applications later on. So, without further ado, BGV. Our mission is to back ambitious founders using tech to tackle big social and environmental challenges that aim to radically improve millions of lives and protect the planet. We believe you can do good and do well, and that tech is one way in which we can accelerate this good. We recently reshaped our key outcomes that we're interested in, and they fall under these three buckets as such: sustainable planet, better society, healthy lives. Sustainable planet, I mean, as you all know, there's no secret, there's a climate crisis. We're looking for startups working in anything from circular economy, reducing our carbon output, changing our lifestyles, etc., so as to combat this climate crisis. A better society relates to both how we organise ourselves and how we champion our values such as peace, justice, fairness, equality, inclusion. And once again, the problem statement is very clear here. I mean, we need to find ways to organise ourselves and to fight for what we, or just work towards what we believe in. Finally, healthy lives. Now, this obviously includes health tech, but specifically we're looking for accessibility and how we can let more people live longer, happier, healthier lives. Our investment thesis, so what is like the underpinning philosophy and why BGV invests in the kind of teams it invests in. Technology enables better and more accessible products and services. First of all, that just means we can solve more problems for more people at scale quicker. It's not a silver bullet tech, but it is helpful in scaling up efforts to achieve positive social environmental outcomes. Next up is that social environmental needs are growing market opportunities. There's effectively a lot of money to be made from solving these problems that humanity is facing. Often banded around in this space is a report by the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, how achieving the Sustainable Development Goals set by the UNDP could be worth $12 trillion year on year in just 4 key sectors. So this is a big market opportunity, both from expanding markets and also finding innovative ways to make use of changing incentive structures. Diversity is hugely important in BGV, both at the level of our team, the teams we back, and the values we install into our teams. It's proven to have better outcomes, better understanding of the problem that's solving, and more success in actually running a tech food company. And finally, we're kind of seeing wave after wave of empirical confirmation that when consumers are given the choice between doing something, the consumption of a product or a service that is beneficial compared to one that's not, they'll always choose to do what's beneficial, and even sometimes attribute a higher financial value to that. And obviously talk is cheap, but here are some key points on what our track record has been since we launched back in 2012. Backed 127 Tech for Good ventures, of which 73 are still running. We've put in £3.1 million into these teams. They've gone on to raise 80 million in latter funding rounds, but on top of that, they have benefited the lives of 12.3 million people, according to our 2019 Impact and Learning Report. On top of that, we really believe in being part of something bigger, so we support the London Tech for Good community. That's organised by both, we'll run through content, meetups, connections, networking, so on. And we're very quickly approaching 10,000 members of that. So it's a really bustling and thriving community that continues to grow very quickly. And finally, we've got a world-class network of mentors, experts, investors, you name it, who support both us and our teams and create a wealth of knowledge sharing and opportunities for the teams that we back. These are the principles which guide our decision-making process, both on how we run ourselves as a company, but also the kind of teams we back and the kind of values we want to install in the teams. This ranges, of course, from be imaginative, act early. We're nearly always the first investor in the tech food companies that we back, but also, yeah, right through to taking the long view. Like, we want to back today the companies that in 2030 will be impacting millions of lives positively, but also generating top returns. And hopefully among all of you, that will be a great number. So we'll be excited to see what kind of ideas are coming through and what kind of ventures are on the table. Here we are as a team. These will be the people that, if you're on the program, will be supporting through, say, one-to-one mentoring or providing connections or content. It looks a bit like a Netflix crime family drama, but I promise we're mostly nice. I'm front and center of the picture. To the left of me, from the side you're facing, is Bethnal, and then standing up the back right is Dharma. They're both on the call as well. And bottom right, we have venture partners who also provide a lot of expertise and mentorship for teams, both on the program and later on. So, what do we offer in our two successful applicants? Firstly and foremost, of course, is investment. And the headline here is the 30K investment for 7% of equity. And that's obviously the same for everyone that comes onto the program. We then have the capacity to invest at later stages in the teams that we have supported earlier on, but the front door is always that 30K, 7%. And there are no kind of strings attached on how that 30K is spent. Obviously, some founders will need that just for rent and bills, whereas some might have it for dev or outreach or something. So the investment is obviously a big attraction and in the program. But then once you're on the program, what's hugely valuable is the learning experience. So for 2 days a week, sometimes 3, there are kind of intensive workshops, lectures, or any kind of upskilling programs for teams to kind of focus on all the different aspects of starting a successful tech for good startup. And these are split into kind of series of sprints focused on anything from, say, communications and marketing to financial modeling and so on. And at the end of each sprint is a big review where we pull in a load of mentors and people from our network who can, and the companies get to, present how their learnings have mapped across their work and so on, and they get a lot of feedback and what's good, what's bad, what to work on, and so on. That's a really valuable part. But what's also incredibly valuable is the peer support. If you're successful in your application, get onto a cohort, you'll be joined by 9 other teams, which roughly equates to, say, 20 people, all from a hugely diverse range of personal and professional backgrounds. And we really try and facilitate this kind of sharing of both help, ideas, connections, or just cross-pollination of ideas. And we really see that cohorts rise and fall together. And so we really try and cement this peer support between teams. There's mentoring. Now, in this part, it will refer to the kind of one-on-one mentoring you get with the BGV team and our venture partners. But on top of that, we have the capacity from our aforementioned network to put you in touch with the right kind of experts and coaches from our mentor network. And the flip side of that is also connections, and whether it's on the program or throughout your kind of time as a tech for good company, we have the capacity and we do try and put you in front of the right people to level up your business at the right time. And finally, lifelong support. One thing that really differentiates BGV from a lot of other programs is that once the program's over, that's not the end. You, from basically end of the program to either exit or closing or sometimes past that, you remain part of the BGV community, and that involves, say, continued support, continued connections, continued mentoring, and in many cases, continued investment. What we're looking for, so these are our kind of priorities in backing founders and what will make a good application. First and foremost, scalability. We always ask the question to ourselves, and it's the governing question in making an investment. In 5 to 10 years' time, can this company be worth 50 to 100 million pounds and positively impact millions of lives? Like, there are lots of, very cool initiatives that just don't have that aspect of scalability, and we want to be making investments in companies that can, go national, go global, and affect huge change. Then there's innovative application of tech. Obviously, like we are a tech for good investor. We back tech companies, and it doesn't have to be super deep tech, but it ideally is more than just like a normal company that has a website. We need to see an innovative use of technology to achieve positive social and environmental ends. Then there's intentionality and purpose. Is your business model and your impact, are they in lockstep? Are they, for every extra unit you sell or client you service, are you achieving more impact? Is achieving a positive impact front and center in your business thesis as such? And are you aware of potential negative consequences and so on? And are you responsible in how you deal with these? Then there's direct impact. We really want to see direct measurable impact. Like, unless you're driving for a credible theory of social change, which is very hard to prove, what we're really after is, can you, positively impact people's lives, prove that you've done it, measure it, and have data at the end of it. Reducing inequality, this is going to be hugely valuable now with very probable economic downturn, and not a very cheery outcome is that a lot of household incomes will be falling, and we don't want services that will just hit people that have continue to have disposable income. We want inclusive business models that ultimately work towards reducing inequalities across all sorts of intersectionalities. Team, we have and we do back sole founders, but we will always prefer a team, or at least a strong case or evidence that you're building a team. And on top of that, we prefer to see that you are a team that works together well, ahead of just a collection of talented individuals. So we want to see more than one person on the management team, and how the proof that there is a sharing of burden. The main reason for that basically being is it's very hard work. So both being on Accelerator, setting up a tech for good company, you all know that as entrepreneurs, and we will always see more success pretty much when there's more sets of shoulders for the burden to fall on, and also more ideas to bounce off of, and more perspectives to bring to the table. Tech skills and intuition. So obviously not everyone is a coder or a developer or an expert. It's desirable to have those skills in your team, but if they're not present, at least knowing what runways things have, what stuff costs, what the tech lingo as such is, and what is possible and not possible, etc. Finally, availability, again, very important. From September to December, if you're successful and get on the program, you'll be part of this cohort, and whilst obviously you'll be working towards developing your company, you also need availability to participate in the workshops, to gain value from the BGV experience as such. And it's very important for us to be able to kind of infuse that right kind of learning and principle into the company at that early stage. So from September to December, you need to be available to hand over 2 or 3 days a week to participate in these. I thought it'd be helpful just to give at least one example of a company we've backed, because I don't want to take up all your time. I mean, Fairphone were back in like the kind of OG days of BGV, and they are a fully ethical smartphone. That's their supply chain end to end, from mining through to replacing components after they've worn out, as you can see from the modular design, is entirely ethical, sustainable, slavery-free, and recyclable, etc. And they've sold over 160,000 handsets so far, and they continue to do excellent things. And yeah, they are a shining example of what a technically good company can look like. But of course, if you want to see a broader spectrum of the kind of companies we back and the kind of things that are successful on our program, you can head to our website, bethnalgreenventures.com, go into the portfolio section, pick your favorite category, dig through them, read their bios, etc. And yeah, just see what kind of technically good means for us. Obviously, I'm going to say very nice things about BGV. I work for them, and I'd love as many of you to apply as possible. But yeah, here are just some nice things that our portfolio has said about us. One that I always actually like to add on this is from somebody who was on our spring 2019 cohort. It's an electrician called Harrison, and he said, "You took me seriously as an entrepreneur. For that, I can't thank you enough." It's the whole point of we'll value, yeah, there's no cut and fast model for what a tech for good entrepreneur is. We will value you and help you bring that vision into fruition. Now that's enough about me, but I'll quickly hand over to Shitty, who can say a little bit more about a current experience, just so we can get a bit more context from somebody that's not just, yeah, who's, well, living the experience right now. So I'll just say, Shitty, perhaps you could introduce yourself and say a little bit about Breathe Happy and the kind of story of how you ended up on the BGV Tech for Good program.
Sure. Thanks, Will. Thanks for the setup. Should we go to gallery mode and stop sharing so we can see everyone's lovely faces?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. If you're able to put your cameras on, great. If not, that's also great. Hi, I'm Shitty. Lovely. The cameras are coming on. Love that. I am founder of something we call as Breathe Happy. And as it's in the name, we're trying to make lives happier, designing Peloton of yoga. So essentially, the world of online yoga today is one way, passive, pre-recorded classes either on YouTube, including Pelotons themselves. They call as live classes. They're essentially pre-recorded content, and we are connecting the most authentic teachers from the home of yoga to people out there who want to practice meditation, mindfulness, and yoga interactively, one-on-one, in an affordable manner in their living rooms. So that's what Breathe Happy is about. I was thinking on how I can bring the experience live for you guys, and also sort of give you an idea on what sort of companies come in the cohort and what sort of companies are BGV willing to endorse. And I thought no better way than to let you experience one of our classes to assess that we're not the most advanced out there, but what matters is something that works for people. So I am very happy to invite you all to our coming classes on Saturday, Sunday. I've given a discount code as well, which you can avail for free if you're interested in yoga. Just a show of hands, how many of us are interested in yoga, mindfulness, or meditation? Okay, wonderful. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so out of about 20 that I can see on us, we have about 7 raised. So, okay, that's a good number. And that's probably gives you an idea of the numbers. So if I projected that onto the population of UK, which is 66 million, that would give me a big enough market size to take us to the number that Will was talking about. So 100 million in 3 to 5 years, projecting on market shares, etc. So that's about us, our company, and how we got here, as in what are the components that make a company worthwhile to come into something like BGV. So tech for good, a big enough market size, a business model that works, and something that you're passionate about as a team, as a founder. The next point that I wanted to talk about was it being remote. So is it even worth your time? And here's my take on that. For me personally, I think it worked much better. And I don't think it's the most popular opinion. But what happened for us is that the growth just exploded. And I'll come on to that in a minute. But after the lockdown, people were looking for more and more online solutions, and the growth just exploded, and the quantum of work, just like we weren't prepared for that kind of work, and our infrastructure, websites, enrollments, everything just exploded. And all the time that we would have spent on commute, taking the sessions between us, was saved for us. So just practically, logistically speaking, it worked out much better for us. In terms of cons, I mean, that's no brainer. We do miss the personal connection, but I can tell you for a fact that I had to tell Nelly that, calm down. If we'll find a way to connect, because BGV was so active in connecting Friday quiz, and Will here is the quiz master, or so pub quizzes, or Friday evening drinks, or buddy catch up. So they are very proactive in making sure that even the remote experience is not distant. So it's remote, but it's not isolating. And it's a very cozy cohort. I have seen the movement from day one to now, when we feel comfortable pulling each other's leg, even on political things, which you wouldn't feel comfortable doing with, say, even your family on a Thanksgiving dinner, perhaps. So that's the kind of comfort that has crept in, partly thanks to the efforts of BGV, and partly thanks to the situation that we are in, which is being founder in probably one of the toughest times we have all seen and lived through. Talking of which, I wanted to mention, therefore, what are the benefits that BGV brings. So this is not the first time I've been on an accelerator. I've been on two tech accelerators in the UK and one outside. And for me, what I'm going to list now are the specific ones that I found really standing out with BGV. So the first one is that the way BGV works on your feedback. So maybe because it was remote, maybe they do it every time, I don't know. But they assign you people, and those two people will reach out proactively and actively every time after the session, pre-session, for what worked, what didn't work, and what you want. And I have never seen a feedback being taken upon so seriously and acted upon so seriously. So if it was one-on-one support that I wanted, and that is what I wanted, it was immediately acted upon. And that is something that has been a game changer for us. So I have got leads from BGV, because everybody talks about that 0 to 100 and 100 to 1,000 kind of growth. Nobody tells you how to do that, right? You need connections, whether it's B2C or B2B. How do you leverage that network? How do you even get to that network? And that started happening for us after those one-on-ones. Real-time leads from the mentors. So, those two circles that you saw, one of them is Holly, and we are lucky to have her as our mentor. And she in real life has connected us to so many people that have worked out. So yes, of course, there's a filter. So out of 10 to work out, but those two otherwise wouldn't have worked out if I hadn't been in this program. So it was way beyond just the theory. The cohort, peer support that everybody talks about, peer-to-peer, people in the BGV cohort have connected me, and we are doing. So 2 out of those leads again have converted, and we are doing B2B workshops for those companies. And so this is what I mean, that when I say that there are things that actually happen in real life, even with a remote program, even if it's people who you just met like a couple of months ago. Going back to someone that Will quoted, because these are the people who believe in you. Whether it's BGV or the founders, they relate to what you're going through. Your success is as much their success right now. So it's a journey we all of us take together. And sometimes I feel like I'm understood and I'm felt more by these people, even than my own parents. My parents or your mother-in-law or your family would just wants to listen to good news. You don't want to share bad news. But here, this is a safe space. You share everything and you get resolution to maybe 2 out of 10 problems. But that's great. And that really counts for me. So yeah, I mean, you're talking to somebody who are visionaries, and I don't say that word lightly. In my interview, I at that stage, we were only catering to elderly population because we felt that as a market, they were underserved. So Breathe Happy initially was just a company for the elderly. And in the interview, they didn't give us this feedback, but later on, with time, we changed our business model. And like I said, because of lockdown, we started getting a lot of other populations. So we had to open it to the other target segments as well. And then somebody showed us the feedback of our interview, and it had already mentioned that statement that they believed us a lot more than we believed on ourselves. So we had under projected and underestimated our business models, and they were really helpful in pinpointing the right way right then in those 10-15 minutes of interview time. So you're probably talking to people for whom it's a rinse repeat pattern. So they're very good at pattern recognition between what works, what doesn't work. And it's those kind of things probably that will help you. So I guess I've covered everything in terms of what our company is about, what that looks like for you to get into it, in terms of what I got out of the cohort. And I just want to leave you guys with this lasting thought that whether or not you get selected into BGV, whether or not this works out for you, being a founder in these tough times is a truly exceptional thing if it wasn't in the normal times. So full marks to all of us on that, number one. And number two, please figure out your North Star. For us, for example, and that came out of one of the workshops, it is sales funnels. So we see where the customers are going. We know we've got our pulse on the right market opportunity, something that people want. And once you know that you've got something that people want, you just need to follow where people are going, and you will get somewhere. Even if it's not something that you started out, it's not the same proposition, same business model, you'd probably get somewhere. But just find your North Star and stick to it. Don't give up.
Thank you so much, Shiti. That was really helpful. I think quickly before we start with open questions, it'd be great if Bethany and Dharma could just give themselves a quick one-liner introduction. Sorry, Dharma, do you want to go first?
Oh no, Bethany, you go first.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Bethany. I'm the investment associate and look after a lot to do with portfolio, and then whilst you're on the program, bits around investment, connecting to other investors and basically talking all about the investment process, which is always a highlighted topic. So yeah, that's me. I've been with BGV now maybe 15 months now. So yeah, happy to virtually meet you all. Very different from our past Q&As, but hopefully we can get to everyone's questions.
Great. Hi everyone, my name is actually much longer than you see in my Zoom descriptor, but please feel free to just call me Dharma. I am part of the fundraising communications team at BGV. I'm one of the partners at Bethnal Green Ventures and have been working for BGV for almost 3 years now. So it's been quite a sort of significant change over the past years that we've seen, with more interest in impact investing and tech for good. And it's very sort of promising to see so many faces, and obviously not the people who haven't turned on their camera. That's absolutely fine. But it's really great to see so many different people coming forward to wanting to build their own tech for good products and services as well. I'm mostly involved with the BGV program in shaping sort of some of the elements around sort of consequence scanning, impact, a lot of comms and marketing, which we were in week 10 of our first virtual remote program. So if you've got any questions, we can answer those. Which sort of is a nice segue into actually asking your questions. And some of you have been sending through some questions privately already. So one of the things that we're asked, do you take founders where a company hasn't been set up yet? Yes, we do. We we can also help with the sort of registration process. One of the sort of key application and eligibility criteria for us is that you have to be a UK registered company. So setting up the process in Companies House and really helping you with that sort of process is something that we could do. But it's very important to accentuate that there's a particular structure. So you have to be a company limited by shares. You cannot be a CIC, for example. We wouldn't be able to invest in you as that. But if you are pivoting from different structures as well, that's quite some guidance that we can provide, that we've also seen. Another question we've gotten, is there support in finding experts, potentially co-founders? Bethany, do you want to take that on?
Can you just repeat that one? Sorry.
Is there support in finding experts, potentially co-founders?
Yeah, I think something that we try and communicate around kind of coming in as a team is that it's just been the experience of BGV that teams are able to kind of balance better, and especially when you get to a point where you're fundraising, which is, you know, a full-time job, and also managing the company itself, that having two people there, really just having a teammate through it all is valuable. So if a founder comes in alone, but they actively want to find a co-founder, then that's something that we do try to help with. But at the same time, you know your business and who you want to work with best, or the kind of personality that you want to work with. So sometimes that means that we're a sounding board around, like, if you've met someone and you know you want our opinion, then we're happy to meet them, or we're happy to kind of walk through a process of, like, well, what does that look like then for how much equity they should be getting, or the structure then if I'm bringing someone in, and all these kinds of considerations that aren't just as straightforward as sort of like, well, they're joining me as a co-founder, because it is your business and there's kind of more hoops to jump through than that. So I think we provide a fair amount of support around that. But the one thing I will say is that often founders who want to find a technical co-founder, that can be one of the hardest to find. And we don't, for example, have just this like secret cave of amazing technical co-founders. So just be sort of wary of that if that's something that you'd like to find, because those are a little bit more in high demand, I suppose. So sorry if you hear a dog barking in the background, that would be my very loud and annoying dog. But yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Great. There is another question from a few people. What's the cost of the program? Bethany, would you be happy to answer that?
Yeah. So the net investment is 30K, and it's a 55K kind of initial investment. So from that we take the remaining as a program fee. So that's how much the program costs, and happy to kind of like walk through. But I also think it's on the website and Will actually just went through it in the intro around like what all of that covers. So that's the program fee. So it's a net 30K investment for 7%.
Yeah. There's another question. Also, feel free to sort of raise your hand if you have any questions that you want to ask. We'd also like to hear your voices. But for now, I'm gonna take the question from Sang. I would like to know your approach to startups that have a product or a number of products in the development pipeline, but which are targeted to multiple sectors. I ask because our product has application in multiple sectors, but some investors don't like that. So for us, I'm happy to take this one on. For us, the sort of main difference is also at the sort of stage that we invest in, but the sort of ambition that we want to tease out during the application process as well. So one of the key things if you're sort of putting in your application and there's a specific question around what your product or service actually is, then we would really like to see the sort of evidence that you've gotten from particular user research as well, and why your particular focus on these multiple sectors is actually a really a sort of proposition for your future product map and growth strategy as well, because in the end the sort of investment thesis we have is that we do realize that you have to start small and within a particular target audience as well. But if your product, for example, is geared towards making road safety more accessible for older populations, that in consequence also has an impact in making road safety better for people who have children, who use buggies. So there is a sort of multiplier effect when it comes to your own product development in that regard as well, which is why I would say personally it's not a bad thing if you are intending to build a product that is applicable to multiple sectors, but give us enough evidence and data points, user research into explaining why your core target audience in the beginning is, and how you've validated your product with them, and what your sort of growth strategy and future roadmap is. I hope, Sang, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, cool. Anyone else want to ask a question before we move on to the ones in the chat? Raise your hand. Yes, Anton? You just have to unmute yourself. Cool. Oh, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Just two questions. The first one is, do you have a preference for what stage you like the companies to be at? And then as a follow-up question, is it 55K for 7%, of which 25 is like allocated for the fees, or is it 25, it's like a grant, and then 30K for 7%?
Bethany, do you want to take these on?
Sure. So first question around the stage. We normally are the first bit of money into the companies that we invest in. Some have had family and friends, but generally they're sort of bootstrapped at the time that we see them, and super early stage. So when we think about what we look for, it's always the same across the board, but I think that there is a certain emphasis around like, how have you been creative enough to like validate your assumptions around the problem that you've identified, and also validate that what you're building is actually addressing that problem and presenting a potential solution, and you know that you've sort of tested these things. That doesn't mean that you've built an MVP. You know, some have, some haven't, but you know, how have you been creative with like what you've had to work with up to that point in order to sort of validate your assumptions. And then when we think about the team, which is a super important thing for us at that stage, we also look for, you know, if there's multiple founders, like how long have they been working together, what's the nature of their kind of relationship, and you know, we try and look for teams who we think are quite strong together. So stage is a bit of a tough question. I mean, they're all pre-seed, for example, if that helps. Some have a bit more traction than others, but we wouldn't, in terms of like, we're not looking at revenues or anything like that at that point. We try and be as, you know, imaginative as you all are. So that's around stage. The second question around the fee, yes. So what happens is we invest 55, and then 25 of that comes back to us. We invoice you for that, and that is the program fee. So you do walk away with 30K, and that is the final amount that you end up with. We end up with 25 program fee. So the rest doesn't come in a grant. It's invoiced back.
And it's for 7% equity.
Yes.
Does that answer your question, Anta? Yeah, cool. Just additionally on the sort of Davidson, I see your hand, so you'll be next. Just on the sort of stage question as well, just to sort of give you a bit more historical context, maybe. Usually, and that's also a task for you, because as much as we do due diligence on the teams that we invest in, we also ask you to do your due diligence on us. Because it does matter who end up on your cap tables as well. So please do ask us all the hard questions that you can in these sort of conversations. But in essence, we've had companies really think about, and we ask you to do the same, to really think about what the most value is that you can get from joining BGV's program as well, because the only way that we invest into companies is for them to join the program and get the initial 30K investment. We do follow on investments as well. In the past, and you can read up on what type of investments we've done, obviously on Crunchbase, for example, to sort of see the list of companies we've continuously invested in, but also read up on it in our impact report. In the last year, to give you context, we've done 19 investments at the sort of program stage, so a 19 30K, 25K investments, and 9 follow-on investments, which were for example, into a company that we've first invested in 2015, a company called Second Nature now, which was a follow-on funding for a round that was a $10 million Series A round that was led by Barrenjoey. And our sort of principle for doing these follow-on investments as well is around helping the ventures that come onto our portfolio really plug the mid-stage capital gap as well, so we can help you launch and successfully scale your ventures as well. Davidson, you raised your hand for a question.
Yeah, Dama, thank you. Actually, my question relates to like what you said about like doing your due diligence on BGV.
Mm-hmm.
So Shitty said how like she started from like an MVP all the way to like a fully a full product that utilizes a lot of cutting edge technology in the space of 12 weeks.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering, like, how do you get people to that stage so quickly, and like what makes like BGV different from like the other accelerators and the other options out there?
Good question. Will, do you want to answer what makes us maybe different from other accelerator programs?
Yeah, sure. So I think first and foremost, it comes down to just the quality of that teaching that you get in those intensive 3 months. When it comes to the actual product development itself, I think, and Citi's currently still here, we might be able to provide a bit more context, but those meetings you get with, say, the venture partners or your mentoring check-ins is really helpful in like picking apart where you're at as a company and then finding the ways to, say, accelerate on user testing, route to market, and so on. And then just, yeah, like it's a kind of finding the right expertise or skills or person to connect you with who will then be able to kind of push that process through. As for what makes it different, well, BGV is the first startup backer that I've worked for, so I don't know so much on comparisons. What I know though is that it comes largely down to the glowing reports of people that have worked with us beforehand, come on our program and said, look, this is super helpful for both the reputation that comes with being on the BGV program, but also the kind of value that is added whilst you're on it from the connections, the learning, and so on. I hope that answers the question. Well,
yeah, there are sort of we were definitely, when we started in 2012, we were one of the first sort of social impact driven tech accelerators that sort of took a lot from the Y Combinator model as well, because that's the way we invest at that particular stage. But there are more sort of impact driven programs out there now, like Mustard Seed Maize in Lisbon. There is what's it called, Catapult in Oslo. And then you have your average sort of tech accelerator programs and very specific industry programs like the NHS Digital Health Accelerator programs. If you go onto Entrepreneur's Handbook, you'll find a whole list of 183 accelerator and incubator programs just in the UK. So there is a plethora of these type of programs, but I would say as a really distinguish us as well is that we are a VC fund, so we are in the position to help you make those introductions for further funding, with our collective portfolio having raised for 80 million in further investment as well. We've got a stellar sort of portfolio team that Bethany is also part of, who provide you with regular check-ins and lifelong support, particularly around areas in fundraising coaching, really tapping into, really adhere to the sort of needs that you're displaying as well. So in that regard, we're quite different because we have a lot sort of lifelong commitment to helping you thrive. I hope that answers your question. I might take Joe, I see you. You'll go next. There's just one question in the chat that I'd like to answer. During COVID, I guess it helps, but what if the founders that still have a day job? Do you consider those too? So I'm really glad that this question comes up because we live in very uncertain times right now. We definitely have seen the sort of virtue of pivoting our entire program to make it fully remote, and allowing it to become more accessible in that way. But we also fully understand, we usually say we would like to see founders who are committed full time, but we make this with the caveat of actually just shaping the program around up to 2 contact days in a week, so there's still enough time for you to actually continue plowing on to your business or continuing on with your part-time or full-time day job. So we've always seen sort of founders come onto a program. We've got a few founders on our program right now who do have other commitments as well aside from their business. But what we've sort of experienced in the past 8 years of having run these type of programs is that if you have the headspace and obviously the disposable income, because that's a huge barrier for a lot of founders as well, then the people who just have the whole full headspace to commit to making the venture a successful time have a lot more traction earlier on. But it doesn't mean that we wouldn't allow anyone who has particular caring responsibilities or particular responsibilities as a result of COVID as well to continue on earning money, that we wouldn't consider you for the program. Particularly for that reason, we have a question in our application form around your requirements around sort of COVID-19 as well, especially when it comes to social distancing, but also just your circumstances. So please be as frank as possible because we want to make this program as inclusive and accessible as possible for the teams that are come on. Joe, you had a question.
Hey. Actually, just one quick question just on what you just said there, actually, Dharma. So are all of the courses, assuming that lockdown is lifted at some point, and if it's halfway through the application, the trial, are all of the courses based in London, or are some of them sort of spread across the UK? Yeah,
so all the courses are based in London. We're not in Bethnal Green, despite our name. We're based out of Aldgate East in a sort of co-working space called X and Y. So if there are in-person workshops, we would definitely ensure that there's sort of facilitation for both if lockdown restrictions are lifted at any given point, or actually run this fully remote again, depending on the startups and where they're based. So I can't give you a clear-cut answer to this, but if there are in-person elements of the program, they would happen in London. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And it's probably a question possibly for Will. He mentioned earlier on that one of the key principles of BGV is sort of having the ability to sort of, well, the company that they're investing in has to have the ability to be able to measure the direct impact. I just thought exactly how do you see maybe a few examples of this sort of the ability to measure that? Because I can imagine that being quite subjective at times.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, impact measurement is a big kind of beast by itself, but and it's something that we do focus on in the program, basically teaching how to measure and communicate your impact. To provide just a quick headline thing on here is just one of the easiest, well, the two main frameworks we'll go through is UNDP have their Sustainable Development Goals. 17 goals are basically the world we want to make in 2030 with 169 targets and 232 indicators. These are basically just a big spread of things that you can measure your positive impact by. And on top of that, we are connected with, through our board, the Impact Management Project to provide a lot of direct support on impact communication and measurement. So it's obviously great if you come to the table already knowing a lot about the impact you have and measure and stuff like that, and but also at the same time it is a skill that is developed through the program.
Okay, so it's not like a requirement as part of like the interview process to be able to quantify like how much impact you've had. Helpful, but not a requirement.
Exactly that, yeah. Like you don't expect to have a full fleshed out impact report and be whatever the first day. Yeah. I'm just quite conscious of time, so I'll try and quick fire through these. So next question, should we pick up a few from the chat or go to?
Yes, so there are a few, just very conscious, we're gonna end on time, so hopefully, but maybe stay on for a couple of minutes actually. So there are some questions around the sort of early stage, what particular stages and what evidence we'd like to see. For those companies who have more queries on that, we have open drop-in sessions, so you can sign up to these drop-in sessions. We'll send a link out to everyone who's attended today. So you can sign up to actually talk about your business in particular with one of the BGV team members. So hopefully we can answer your questions in those conversations. Also, we are quite frank with feedback as well. We've got a user manual on how we like to provide feedback as well, so you can read up on this if you're really keen to get more feedback on your idea. How many startups do you invest in per round? That's a really good question. So we usually invest in 20 companies per year. We run the accelerator twice a year. To give you a bit of an understanding about the numbers, we usually get around 200 applications per cohort and select up to 10 teams. So that makes it for a 5% success rate. Is that right? Yeah. So it's quite competitive. So what I would say for sort of application tips as well, have a look. You can already sign up on Gust and see the application questions. If you have any particular questions on the questions, you can sign up for those open drop-in sessions and discuss what might be most helpful to put in as your answer as well. But generally, if you follow the guidance and in the descriptions as well, that's usually the type of answers we like to see. Be very and always get feedback. Like if you're writing up your application as well, make sure it's legible, because we're reading up to 200 applications every single for every program as well. So being brief, short, concise, and very straight to the point of why you do what you do is super helpful. What else? But yeah, sorry.
The UK from Emmanuel. So one. Firstly, yeah, we can back teams who are based outside the UK. You do have to register the company in the UK as a company with shares in the UK. As for focusing on markets in Africa, yes, no, Bethany might be able to give a proper clarification on that. I think that's...
Is that startups that are already operating?
Or targeted towards African markets.
Targeted toward.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had this come up Pardon?
We've got a few, like local
Yeah.
electricity project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the key is that it, like Will said earlier, or Dom, I can't remember who, but we invest in UK entities, so it has to mean that all the IP that is in the company, we're investing in that entity, for example. So that's where, and not just startups based in Africa, but anywhere, like that has to be, that's a big no for us if we can't invest into the entity that the IP sits. So yeah, just to keep in mind. But yeah, open to models operating in other geographies.
And just answering the last question on sort of interview process as well, usually from those 200 applications, we always select up to 40 teams for interviews, and from then those 40 teams we select up to 10. All the dates are in the timeline, just very conscious. Elizabeth, you've got your hand raised. Feel free to ask the last question, and then we'll make sure in the follow-up that we answer all the questions in the chat as well and share a sort of transcript of this.
Sure. Thanks, Emma. I'm just wondering whether for the investment you consider, like if there's a preference for the best venture investment to be sort of something that takes the venture to its next milestone, or if the venture has to do quite a significant raise, if you guys look at that and think, oh, that's not so much a fit for us because our money won't take it far. Are there any preferences around that?
Yeah. So I guess the way that we think about it is like there are obviously certain business models that just require huge amounts of capital, or like, you know, if for example we just don't feel like we can be helpful, or we don't feel like we have teams or mentors or anyone in our network that can really add value to the startup, then it's not the right fit for either party. And if we think it's a great idea, then, you know, we'll pass it off to you know, people in our network, other investors who may be a better fit. But overall, you know, like we are willing to always take risk. I mean, that's part of it. But I guess around like getting you to the next milestone or that sort of thing, I mean, our model is based around the idea that you're going to raise more investment, and that it's going to happen quite quickly. That being said, we don't want to invest and then 1 month later there's like, you know, a huge amount of like angels coming in or like that sort of thing. But yeah, we know, we're conscious that that's going to happen quite soon. So I mean, yeah, I guess it's going to depend case by case. I know that's not a very specific answer, but it typically is the way we try to think about it, because we don't want to have like a blanket statement as to like, oh, we don't invest in this, or we, you know, only invest in this, to leave it open. But yeah, we try to make sure that it's like mutual benefit on both sides.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Cool. And just one thing, because I've seen it in the chat, just to make sure, unfortunately, offer is non-negotiable. So I know that some teams are like, well, what if I can do this, or we can show this? And unfortunately, if you make one exception, then everyone wants an exception. So that offer is non-negotiable, and we do follow-on investments at pre-seed and seed as well, into portfolio ventures. So yeah.
Thanks so much, everyone. We've run out of time, but if there are any more questions, again, please do let us know. We'll send you a link with the sort of recording of this as well, if you want to see all our faces again, as well as answer any of the remaining questions in the chat as well, so you get to see the answers of everything as well. We'll send you a link to register for those drop-in sessions with BGV members as well. It's usually a 20-minute, 30-minute chat where we can dive deeper into who you are as a business and whether you're a good fit for the BGV program as well. So please do sign up if you want to hear more and talk through your idea as well. But thanks so much for joining. We hope this was useful. Yes, we'll answer those questions. But yeah, see you next time. And if you are applying, we'll look forward to reading your applications. Bye, everyone.